the FIFA Technical Advisory Group list yesterday that you're on, and just wondering, I think there were 2 meetings thus far, we were told yesterday, what you've maybe taken away from that, what do you think the player input will look like? We saw yesterday on a slideshow that player welfare was part of what is being discussed, and I guess maybe the hot topic of the day and hour of if you have any personal opinion, thus far on the potential of a biennial World Cup.
I was asked to be a part of the FIFA advisory board, which I accepted, and have actually really enjoyed the conversations that we've had around a biannual FIFA World Cup, around a change in the FIFA windows, and what else? Just a change in the possible number of rest days in between FIFA windows. And looking at how that can coordinate with club seasons a little bit better, especially for me, looking at how that can coordinate with the NWSL season, so I can be more active with my NWSL club with Orlando rather than having to miss multiple games. I think it's been great to see FIFA looking for player input. We had an appearance from Gianni, the first conversation, and Jill has been very active leading the advisory board. So it's kind of the first of its kind. I think it's really great that they're looking for player input, and not only from US players, but or just like the top players, but they're looking at all regions and players who play in different in different leagues around the world, are kind of different ranked teams. So it overall, it's been a really positive thing. I look at that and look at how important it would be for NWSL to actually have an advisory board in a similar way, with players and coaches and other people who have a wealth of experience in that side, looking at it from a different side than the business side or from the ownership side. In terms of biannual World Cup, I see the pros and cons in both. Just with the history of the World Cup, I think it's really difficult to grasp a concept of changing from every 4 years to 2 years, because historically it's just what we've done and what we're used to. But I also look at the growth of the women's game and how it could really benefit domestic or club leagues around the world. It could really benefit really every federation and their players in terms of visibility, in terms of gaining more coverage for women's soccer. We see a huge bump of that coverage and of media talking about women's football when the World Cup comes around, and the after effect of that, especially in the countries that perform well. So it's definitely an ongoing conversation, but I think having that conversation with the FIFA advisory group was really great for me to wrap my head more around the benefits of it, rather than looking at historically what the World Cup has always been.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you. Let's go to Sean Goodwin from KC Star. Go ahead, Sean.
Hey, Alex. Appreciate the time. Just chatting about World Cup. There's a delegation from FIFA in Kansas City on Thursday for the 2026 Men's World Cup. I know obviously with you're a lot more involved on the women's side, but I'm just curious, soccer-wise for Kansas City, what kinds of sense do you get from Kansas City when it comes to soccer, not just for the men's game, but for the women's as well, and just as a whole of how big of a soccer city Kansas City is?
I think Kansas City is a huge soccer city. I was able to kind of live here a little bit in 2015 when my husband played here for half of the season. So I got to experience sold out stadium, sold out crowds every single game that Sporting Kansas City had. The women's team here, I'm hopeful that it seems like they are very ambitious and have high hopes for the future of the team here. So I'm excited for that. And with the facilities and the stadiums they're looking to have and build. But I mean, just outside of my window, it says "Bring the World Cup to Kansas City." So if that, and it's the biggest poster that you can see in Kansas City. So if that doesn't say "Bring the World Cup" here, I don't know what does. If that doesn't say that this city is full of soccer fans, then I don't know what does.
Thank you, Sean. Let's go to Nancy Armour. Go ahead, Nancy.
Hey, Alex. Thanks for doing this. I'm going to make it 3 in a row about World Cup questions. When you guys had the discussion with Johnny, how important was it to get the commitment from FIFA or to hear a commitment from him that this wouldn't be just something that he would put into place, that there would be money behind it? Because that's always been one of the big challenges, is getting certain federations to fund their women's teams in particular between World Cups or between big events.
Yeah, the financial piece was definitely part of our conversation. And, we looked at not only the financial part of it when it comes to the World Cup, but also increasing the number of federations that have women's teams that play year round, not only play in qualifiers once every 4 years or possibly in the future once every 2 years. So how do we continue to incentivize and put more money into the women's game? So that's a huge piece of it as well. I don't think you can have one without the other. You can't have a biennial World Cup without addressing the financial piece. And I think Gianni is well aware, with myself, with Lindsay, with Jill on the advisory board, how much that means to the women's soccer community.
Thanks, Nancy. Let's go to Jeff Carlisle. Go ahead, Jeff.
Thanks, Aaron. Hi, Alex. What's your sense of the discussions between the NWSLPA and the NWSL leadership at the moment? How do you think those talks are going, and how receptive do you think the league has been to the PA's demands?
Honestly, I wish I knew more because, and I don't, because I'm not part of the NWSLPA, and that's because I'm an allocated player. It's kind of a weird situation, and I hope that all allocated players in the future are part of the PA, but I have been updated by our player reps who have been very active and involved with the negotiations between the PA and our PA reps for Orlando that have been very active between PA and NWSL negotiations. I feel optimistic with what information they've given me. However, the demands that the PA has put forth for the NWSL to commit to and to approve have still not been taken care of, and there has been an extension. So that in itself says that the NWSL still is being a little too reactive. And I know that there's a lot of things that need to change, but we need to start building that trust. And at this point, it's just not there yet.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Let's go to Jonathan Tannewald. Go ahead, JT.
Thanks, Aaron. Apologies, Alex. I'm going to go back to the World Cup questions again. I've two actually, one about that and one not. The one on the World Cup is a bunch of us talked with Jill yesterday. She did a round table, and she said it's not a foregone conclusion that a biennial World Cup is going to happen, but she sure made it sound like she's going to push it in that direction. And I wonder if the players globally, not just the ones on the technical advisory group, but, on a global scale, FIFPro and the USWNT and the other national labor unions say, no, we don't want to do this. Do you think that'll get listened to and potentially stop? Will they listen to the players and not do it if the players don't want it? So that's one question. The other, unrelated to that, is with everything that's going on in the NWSL, and obviously you've been terrifically outspoken and leading the way on in the public sphere of a lot of it and such. Does stepping out of that to a national team camp, is it for the better to help clear the mind? Is it for the worse to be doing something else for a few days and not that. Take us through that. Thanks.
So going back to your first question, I just don't think that's a consensus of all players to not want this World Cup every 2 years. I think there was actually a lot of opinions shared in favor of a World Cup every 2 years on the advisory board by current and former players. There's still a lot of discussions to be had, but I think this FIFA advisory board was created to listen to the players. And so if all players said, no, this is crazy, we cannot do this, this will hurt women's football globally in such a great way that we can't recover from this, is Gianni and FIFA going to listen? Of course. But that's what this advisory board is formed to do, is to have the consensus of the players that are actually going to be affected by this, both positively and negatively. And it's not a decision taken lightly, and it's still ongoing discussions. When it comes to the NWSL and coming into camp during quite a emotional and exhausting couple of weeks, not on the field, but from the NWSL that's affected us, from the harassment and abuse that we've heard of, and the changes that need to be implemented within the NWSL. Coming into the national team, 90% of players here or more play in the NWSL. So I think it's actually good to come in here and just have conversations with some players that, I haven't talked to in the last few weeks. I think it's also, our national team PA has been able to really grow in the last 5 years, and that's a bit longer than the NWSL PA. So I think that for us to come together and to be able to throw ideas and brainstorm together in order to see how we can help the NWSL PA, how we can help get the NWSL on the right direction and the right path in a way that's successful for both the players and the clubs is important. So I'm actually really happy to come in with the national team and play against South Korea. That was the first time I said South Korea on this whole call, but it's been a really tough couple of weeks. And so I'm happy to be here with the national team.
As always, thank you for the time and the candor.
Thanks.
And I will echo that. And we're going to let Alex go.